What is happening? J Gaming Dude here, and I am a day late and a penny short, so let's jump into what happened at the PlayStation State of Play for pretty much May 2024. And it just so happened that it was pretty much on the last day of May. So looking into the State of Play, which is pretty much PlayStation's little mini presentation that usually lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, that usually show just a handful of games with usually a disembodied voice, but now we're actually seeing people, presenting in those videos. So what does the future of PlayStation have for us as of the moment? So looking at the list of titles here, and I'm going to be using this GameSpot article as kind of like a basic rundown sort of thing. So let's just jump right into it. First and foremost, they showed off Concord by providing like a bit of a short video to introduce the characters and the world, and that took up about 10 minutes. That's great and all because, Sony is known for great characters, great writing, and things like that. Unfortunately, you are also trying to bring in a multiplayer crowd because this is, by all accounts, a 5v5 multiplayer first-person shooter. And the thing is that you can't really have a multiplayer game with a great story combined together in a single product. And a solid example of this being done extremely poorly is Blizzard's Overwatch, because the story of Overwatch is not in the game, instead it is outside of the game and you need to look for it yourself. So it's just very poorly done in terms of presentation, I should say, presenting you with a story and characters and then the multiplayer elements. But with that being said, I'd like to be proven wrong. Concord is trying to do things interestingly by being like every week there's going to be a new cinematic. Problem is that multiplayer games hate story or don't really appreciate cinematics in their multiplayer game, and people who play story-based games with cinematics and all the rest of it don't like multiplayer because having people around kind of suck. I don't know, but that's just a little something in there just to kind of start off with. I'm going to go through each thing also just kind of quickly. God of War Ragnarok comes to PC, so the sequel to God of War 2018, which was kind of a soft reboot and kind of a sequel to the original God of War games. Cool. Now, it's definitely worth mentioning that all PlayStation games moving forward will require you to log in with your with a PSN account, meaning that moving forward, regardless of whether or not it's a single player only game or a multiplayer only game, all PlayStation games on PC will require a PSN account. No leeway will be made for that sort of thing. And also, it was also mentioned that this was really like a interview between the dual CEOs of PlayStation, that games that are multiplayer or live services, such as Concord, which we mentioned earlier, will have day and date PC PS5 launches to bring in as many people as possible. However, keeping in mind, PlayStation games on PC still require PSN account, so that stipulation will always remain regardless. Moving forward, we have Dynasty Warriors Origins. The last Dynasty Warriors game we got was Dynasty Warriors 9, and that was a god-awful game. So I hope that Origins is going to be a return to form, at least closer to like a Dynasty Warriors 6 or 7. 8 was alright, don't get me wrong, but like 9 was just god-awful in every sense of the word. And I think like after the PS2 era of Dynasty Warrior games, they've kind of been getting worse. So, it'll be interesting to see what Origins brings to the table, given that I'm talking mainline Dynasty Warriors and not any of the side games like Warriors All-Stars, Hyrule Warriors, Dragon Quest Heroes and things like that. Like none of those, just mainline Dynasty Warriors. That's what I meant to say. Alright, next we have Infinity Nikki, which is pretty much, I did actually make a video about how I'm really excited for this game, even though it's clearly not actually marketed to someone like myself, who is a guy that is of not necessarily older age, but yeah, pretty much it's just not aimed at me. But I'm still very much excited for this. It is so pretty much the Nikki series is a series of dress-up games on mobile, and the series has been around for the past 10 years. So Infinity Nikki is actually the first time it'll actually be on consoles rather than just on mobile, and it has sort of a more open world aesthetic to it, but beyond that we don't really know much more besides dressing up, using abilities of different outfits, similar to like kind of what we would see in the combat of, say, Final Fantasy X-2, for example. Different outfits giving you different abilities and all the rest of it. So this seems more exploratory, less combative, but it'll be interesting to see how it's going to look moving forward. Now, Ballad of Antara, a dark fantasy ARPG. So this is an interesting game because it definitely evokes some sense of like Tenchu in terms of its combat, but I think it might be easier to say that it's Sekiro with more fanatical element, like fantastical elements, and less to do with difficulty or parrying. Parrying was a massive thing in Sekiro. But beyond that, we don't really know too much more. Again, the combat looks cool, very hacky slashy type thing, but beyond the complexities of the actual combat, it's just showing off some boss fights. It looks interesting. It's on my radar, but I can't say I'm as excited or enthused for Ballad of Antara as I am for, say, Infinity Nikki, for example. So this will definitely be on a to-watch list for sure. Skydance's Behemoth. Now, this is a PSVR 2 game. The same guys who made The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. And pretty much this is supposed to be an RPG in VR. I think, yeah, it's going to be interesting because we've had Skyrim in VR, and that was an interesting time. So I wonder what Skydance's Behemoth is going to bring to the table. It's, of course, made by Skydance. And, again, it's a open, well, I assume a world that you can explore freely, sort of RPG-ish type of thing, similar to that of, say, Skyrim. That's why I use Skyrim VR as an example initially. So we have that, we have now Skydance's Behemoth. So hopefully the game looks a lot better. Hopefully there's, more content and things like that. Though it's worth mentioning that PSVR 2 is technically dead because this and the next game that's going to be PSVR 2, neither of them are actually exclusive to the platform, and in fact are going to be on MetaQuest 3 and some other platforms. So worth putting that out there as well. The other PSVR 2 game mentioned was Alien Rogue Incursion. They just showed off a short teaser with the Xenomorph, and that's about it. Like, it was a very short teaser. I want to say like 10-15 seconds at most. So definitely worth mentioning. Nothing to really talk about. It's a licensed franchise, so again, there is very little in the way of guessing what the actual outcome of this game is going to be. Is it actually going to be good? How is it going to play? And stuff like that. I feel like Alien Isolation was certainly a freak accident of like a good game being made by Creative Assembly. So Rogue Incursion, definitely, if you're interested in the Alien franchise, worth keeping an eye out for. Marvel's Rivals. Now this is the Marvel Heroes in a Overwatch game. Well, it's an Overwatch clone, effectively. Yeah, that's what Marvel Rivals is. It is an Overwatch clone with Marvel characters. So I feel like those CEOs are onto something by saying, hey, you know what? Like, people will only attach themselves to known IP and will never actually try new IP. And Marvel Rivals is a solid example of that, because Marvel characters are now incredibly well known due to the fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a thing that was happening. However, as time has gone on after Endgame, people have slowly gotten very tired of superhero stories, superhero movies, and everything else in between. And that's why, unfortunately, I can't get certain family members to try out, The Boys, because it's superhero related, but it's not really even that. So, yeah, it is what it is. That's my beef. Yeah. It's going to be coming to PS5 as a closed beta. That's going to be interesting to see. And PlayStation exclusive Spider-Man skin for those who participate in the closed beta. 5v5, as similar to that of Concord. So look forward to it if that is something that you're interested in. Personally, I'm not, but you do you. Where Winds Meet. Now, this one for me is personally quite exciting. It was shown off a while ago, actually, with a very similar title, and maybe it's the same game as about a couple of years ago. But pretty much, it's just a brief trailer of the main character fighting bosses. And so while this article explains it as like a Souls-like action game, we didn't really get much in the way of feeling that, besides the fact that the bosses look kind of cool, the combat looks cool, but there wasn't much in the way of dodging, parrying, or things like that, so it's kind of difficult to really be able to tell. And Souls-like suggests that when you die, you get reborn at you get respawned at like a checkpoint, bonfire, whatever have you. There was no suggestion to that effect, so it's difficult to tell. Again, hacky slashy, but has some element that makes it feels like it could be a Souls-like game. But take that for what you will. It looks cool though. That much I can say with absolute certainty. So this is the second game that actually I am personally quite excited to see a little bit more of, or to actually try. So, Until Dawn is getting a remake. So the reason why it was removed from the stores earlier this year is because there was actually a rumor that Until Dawn was actually going to be for PS5 and PC. And sure enough, it absolutely is. In fall 2024, or fall of this year, it is going to arrive. So that's spring for the rest of us that live in the Southern Hemisphere. So look forward to that. If you like your slashy horror games, this would be the one to play, because you're effectively playing a movie in which you make characters make decisions and then, play out those decisions as a slasher movie sort of plays. So interesting, make decisions for characters within the slasher movie, and then you sit down and watch what happens. Also, there is QTEs, where if you successfully do the QTEs, they might survive or die. Or if you fail the QTEs, they might almost certainly die. It really depends on which QTEs you're talking about and stuff like that. Not going to get into any details, but this is a fun time to get a bunch of people around a corner. So another one that I'm excited to jump back into and replay Until Dawn and get another platinum trophy out of it. I'm not much of a Diablo guy, but I'm sure a lot of people are quite excited for this. Path of Exile 2 has been announced and is going to be coming out in early access later this year. So this is going to be real fun, because it's interesting how Diablo hasn't been doing much in the way of bringing people back, especially with Diablo 4. People are like happy but disappointed, but then happy a little bit more, but then disappointed way more. So Path of Exile has always been there to kind of be a place for people who like playing those action RPGs like Diablo, to be able to find an alternative that isn't trying to cause them to, spend money on their credit card in order to be able to even get an experience that they're looking for. Especially since people who play Diablo more so enjoy stuff like what Diablo 2 was, and how much lesser of a product Diablo 4 seems to be in comparison. But Path of Exile seems to be like a solace to that. So Path of Exile 2 coming out later this year. Action RPG fans, please be excited. Now here's another one that I'm excited about, but I can't I'm scratching my head thinking something feels wrong about how this game has been shown numerous times. Silent Hill 2 Remake is coming out in October 8th, and while I am excited to jump into it, the fact of the matter is there's a couple of things that are making me somewhat hesitant about this remake. Specifically that it's being developed by Bloober Team, the fact that Konami is behind it as well. So there's two entities that I do not trust when it comes to horror, because Bloober Team has never made a good horror game, even though that's all they make, and Konami has kind of screwed everything up since letting go of Kojima back in 2015 when Metal Gear Solid 5 released, and he has then since left Konami to do his own thing. Or rather, he was never part of Konami, but he just stopped partnering with Konami and went off to do his own thing. But the thing is that the gameplay seems kind of rough in spots. And yes, well, not gameplay, rather combat. And combat isn't really a massive thing in Silent Hill games. In fact, it never has been. It's always been about the stealth elements, about working your way around, big monsters and things like that. But something just feels off about the way the main character looks, The combat feels a little bit off, and I'm sure they're changing things around, but there's just a little something that at the back of my mind, I'm like, this just does not feel right, and I don't feel excited for this as much as I should be, I should say. I'm still excited for it, but I'm not as enthused as I thought I would be. I don't know, it's just a personal thing as a horror fan. I feel like I've just gone back and replayed other horror games, and after getting Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 4 Remake, Silent Hill 2 Remake, I feel like it just will not be able to live up to the potential that it had it been done by some team that actually does these sorts of things better. I digress. Moving on from that, now here's one that I'm extremely excited for. I have been jumping up and down. Could not be more excited for Monster Hunter Wilds, where I can slice up monsters, use their hide as to create more armor, or use one of their fangs that I ripped out from their dead corpses because I needed a stronger sword for the higher tier monsters. Oh god, yeah. Monster Hunter Wilds was announced last year to be coming out in 2025, and we get the first look at some gameplay and some characters, and Wilds seems to kind of pitch its tent in being more of a desert compared to like desert locations, compared to what Iceborne did with ice locations and what Monster Hunter World did. So I'm very excited for this. If you are a Monster Hunter fan, absolutely you would also be excited as well for this, because it's been a while since we've gotten a good Monster Hunter like world. Granted, Monster Hunter Rise is also good, but it's not quite a world. And if you aren't into Monster Hunter games and you're interested in it, absolutely try out Monster Hunter World, because that's probably the easiest way to get into the franchise. I would suggest Rise as well if you get into World, but only if you get into World, because then you'll notice there's quite a few differences between what is a console Monster Hunter and then what portability brought to Monster Hunter as well, though, you know, you've got the Freedom games on PSP and stuff like that, so definitely worth trying out. And finally, the most exciting announcement of all of them, Astrobot is returning. Rather than having Astrobot Rescue Mission or Astrobot's Playroom, Rescue Mission being a PSVR 1 title, and therefore kind of, you know, releasing a game to a smaller audience, and then Astro's Playroom, which is pretty much the pack-in title for PS5s, we now have Astrobot. That's all it's going to be called, and it's a 3D platformer, I guess? Yeah, 3D platformer. It has a lot of references to a lot of PlayStation IP, and I feel like it's really stringing you along regarding, you know, references, nostalgia, and things like that. But the gameplay actually looks really, really good, and is going to be launching September 6th. Or the 6th of September, so do look forward to that. I am extraordinarily excited for this. So, of all the 14 announcements, myself personally, the ones that I'm excited for are Astrobot, Monster Hunter Wilds, Silent Hill 2 Remake, Until Dawn, Where Winds Meet, and I guess just Infinity Nikki, maybe Dynasty Warriors Origins. So a good number of these games are things that I would personally be looking forward to, but let me know what you guys think about all that in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 200 subs by the end of the year, and with all that said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.